It always begins with a sound that doesn't belong. A hiss-like static, a whisper too close to your ear, and then the unmistakable click of something old pressing play. Welcome to Darkhaven. Tonight, I invite you to sit with me in the shadows as we uncover one of the most unsettling legends ever whispered, the Lost VHS of the witch's orphanage. The story begins centuries before cameras existed, before the invention of film could ever capture proof of nightmares. On the edge of a desolate marsh, in a region where fog rolled like ocean tides, and the earth itself smelled of iron, stood a timber house known simply as the Orphanage. The locals claimed it was a place for children without homes, but in hushed tones, they called it something else. A vessel, a mouth, a place that swallowed more than it ever sheltered. Its keeper was a woman known only as Mistress Edda. No one remembered her arrival in the village, nor could anyone recall her age. Some described her as painfully thin. Others said her shadow looked too tall for her frame. She spoke in a voice that was calm, motherly even, but it carried a weight that pressed against the chest, as though the air itself obeyed her. The villagers brought their unwanted children to her doorstep. Some were orphans, yes. Others were children who had been marked unlucky, the sickly, or the strange. They whispered that to place a child in her care was to ensure survival. Though what kind of survival, none dared say aloud. Official records listed accidents, fever sweeping through dormitories, children drowning in the nearby marsh, others lost to winter storms. But the unofficial stories carried darker truths. Lullabies in a language that made teeth chatter. Circles of salt spread across floorboards, salt so black the wind refused to scatter it. Sheep skulls placed on the threshold with candles glowing in their eye sockets. Every so often, an outsider tried to shut the orphanage down. Each attempt ended the same. The would-be savior vanished, or else fled the village in silence, leaving belongings behind as if chased away by something unspeakable. Eventually, the orphanage fell into ruin. The timber warped and collapsed into the swamp. The ground swallowed it whole until only the cellar remained, a stone mouth lined with iron teeth. The marsh grew over it, and for a time, it seemed the world had forgotten. But memory clings to places the way rot clings to bone. Decades later, in the late 1970s, a house was built on that cursed foundation. A modest ranch, bland in design, perfect for the suburban dream. Its first owners lasted 3 winters before abandoning it. They left food in the pantry, clothes still hanging in closets, children's toys scattered on the floor. After that, the house passed from one family to another, each stay shorter than the last, until it was finally left to rot. Then came the discovery. A picker, a man obsessed with collecting VHS tapes and forgotten media, came across a cardboard box in the attic while searching through the abandoned home. Most of the contents were ordinary, home movies, birthday parties, weddings. But one tape was different. No label, no handwriting, just black plastic that felt warm to the touch, as though it had been pulled from sunlight, though the attic was ice cold. The collector carried it home, curious. He cleaned his VCR, slid the cassette inside, and pressed play. At first, only static, a gray snowstorm that hissed through the speakers. But then, shapes began to bleed through. A nursery, or perhaps a hospital ward, appeared on screen. 6 cribs, a rocking chair in the corner, and faded wallpaper blistering off the walls. There were no people, no voices, just the low hum of the machine. He leaned closer, expecting the tape to be blank. But then the rocking chair moved, only slightly. A half-inch forward, a half-inch back. No draft, no curtain stirring. Just motion with intention. His throat dried. He told himself it could be explained. Old film, perhaps distorted. Mice under the floorboards. But the chair moved again. Further this time, finding a rhythm dot, then came the children. At first, only faint outlines. Shadows that stained the screen. Slowly, they sharpened into shape. 5 small figures sitting in a row on the floor. Their hair belonged to different decades. Their clothes to none. They did not move, they did not breathe, but their faces turned toward the camera in eerie synchronization. Their mouths closed tight, their eyes wide and unblinking. The screen flickered. Their faces grew clearer, as though the tape wanted to be seen. They blinked together in perfect unison. Then the sound returned. A faint hum. Not words, not song. Just a vibration that rattled in the watcher's bones. From the corner of the frame, she appeared. The tall woman. Her dress hung gray and smoke-like, her body moving in ways the camera couldn't quite catch. Her elbows lagged behind her arms, her face blurred between frames, her hands arriving before her wrists. She knelt beside the smallest child and lowered her head as if to listen. The child blinked once, and then, in the space of a single frame, he was gone. No transition. One moment there, the next, air. The collector recoiled, but the tape did not pause. The angle shifted. Now the camera faced a hallway that did not belong to any suburban home. A corridor stretched endlessly, doors lining both sides, as though the house had unfolded into something older, larger, and alive. The floor glistened as though wet. A lullaby began to play, sweet at first, then sour. The melody twisted, vowels bending into shapes that did not belong to any known language. The watcher found himself humming along without meaning to, the sound spilling from his throat in notes that felt borrowed. At the far end of the hall stood a figure, a woman with a long braid quivering as though vibrating with the music. She turned slowly. For one frame, her face flared too bright, not with light, but with absence, an unface, features erased, a geometry that could not be human. The basement came next. Stone walls dripping with condensation, jars stacked on shelves, filled with things better left unnamed. A circle painted on the floor in something dark and syrup-thick, dried at the edges. Inside the circle stood the woman. This time her hair hung loose, slick, and shining. She lifted her hands, and the horizon itself tilted as though the circle demanded obedience. Children lined the perimeter, more now than before. Their eyes were pits, glossy and black, yet reflecting faint flickers of the screen itself, as if the tape had colonized their pupils. When the woman spoke, her words slid beneath the watcher's skin, settling deep into bone. The language was wrong, snapping consonants, vowels stretched into moans. The children answered in unison, a single droning chord. The circle pulsed dot, and then the door appeared. A door the watcher knew. His door. The basement door inside his very own home. On screen, it opened, revealing his hallway. His boots by the wall. His crooked runner rug. His couch. His television. Panic overtook him. He yanked the plug from the wall. The tape kept playing. He threw a blanket over the screen, but the air around it was damp and hot, like the breath of a sleeping animal. The lullaby tinkled again, notes uneven, collapsing in on themselves. And then she stepped through, the tall woman, the braid swinging, a bundle in her arms, a striped hospital cloth wrapped around something small, too small, but heavy with ceremony. She tilted it back, and the screen distorted with interference. For just a moment, he saw the impossible. A child's face with too many soft spots, the skull unfinished, shifting like clay, lips forming the first note of the lullaby. He ran. Of course he ran. To the kitchen, to the breaker box, to the door. Locks refused him. Electricity hummed back to life as if mocking him. When he returned, the screen showed the nursery again, as if granting him mercy, a mercy he knew would not come twice. Days later, neighbors complained of the blue glow flickering from his living room window. They thought he'd gone away, perhaps on a trip. When the landlord entered, The smell of standing water clung to the air. The television buzzed softly. On the screen, 6 children sat in a row, their eyes turned toward the camera, their mouths closed tight. And in the corner, the rocking chair moved.